Now, as promised, the news in detail. Let's begin with our top story. The U.S. Congress has raised concerns over India's continuing restrictions in occupied Kashmir. In a meeting of the U.S. Congress Foreign Affairs Subcommittee, Assistant Secretary of State Alice Wells called for the rights of Kashmiris to be respected. More in this report. The actions by Prime Minister Modi's Hindu nationalist government in occupied Kashmir have triggered criticism by members of the U.S. Congress. A congressional committee criticized India's curfew, communications blackout, and mass arrests in the occupied valley. Secretary of State Alice Wells said the U.S. has urged Indian authorities to restore full access to services, including the internet and mobile networks. Wells urged India to take concrete democratic steps towards occupied Kashmir and to suspend all acts of violence.
But what I can assure you is that we are reaching out and engaging a wide cross-section. We are engaging at various levels and across ministries in the Indian government to make the case for why a political roadmap, something that we all understand how India moves forward to reestablish elected, state assembly, is what we would like to see out of our, democratic friend.
The Assistant Secretary of State said Kashmiris have a right to live in dignity and participate fully in society and governance. Wells said the U.S. wants to work with both Pakistan and India to pacify international escalation.
Indian government assesses Kashmir to be an internal problem, but obviously it's a problem that has external consequences that are meaningful, and including the deterioration in relations between India and Pakistan. And we take very seriously the escalation in rhetoric and tensions between two nuclear armed countries.
The committee also renewed U.S. President Donald Trump's offer to mediate the Kashmir issue if both Pakistan and India agree. Wells stressed on the importance of a political roadmap in negotiating Kashmiri's future. Well, Pakistan says it will attend an upcoming four-party meeting on the Afghanistan peace process in Moscow. China, Russia, and the U.S. will also participate in the dialogue. In a press conference, Foreign Ministry spokesman Mohammad Faisal said Islamabad will continue to facilitate peace in Kabul. Faisal said Pakistan's role is noteworthy in crystallizing international convergence for a peaceful resolution in Afghanistan. Refuting India's claims, Faisal said irresponsible allegations of the Indian Army chief and the lack of response from India expose the lies. He said the visit of diplomatic corps to the line of control has exposed the Indian falsehood to the global community. He said India's aggressive posture is a growing threat to regional peace and stability. The spokesman also mentioned that the Kartarpur corridor agreement will be signed tomorrow. Well, the Taliban say Beijing has invited them to attend a fresh round of intra-Afghan peace talks in China next week. Taliban spokesman Sohail Shaheen said Beijing's Afghanistan envoy Deng Xijun extended the invitation in a meeting with the group's leaders in Doha. Shaheen said a delegation led by Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar met with Xijun. He said the talks are planned for October 28th and 29th. Meanwhile, President Ashraf Ghani says he wants to start peace talks with the Taliban. In an interview, Ghani said these negotiations will be his top agenda if last month's election results declare his victory. The U.S. and Europe and the UN have said sustainable peace in Afghanistan can only be achieved through negotiated political settlement. Representatives from all over Europe and the U.S. envoy for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, held a special meeting in Brussels. Khalilzad is on a new tour of Brussels, Paris, and Moscow to revive the Afghan peace process. In a joint statement after the meeting, representatives supported renewed Afghan peace talks. The statement stressed the need for an immediate and sustainable ceasefire. Elsewhere, British police have found 39 dead bodies in a truck container at an industrial estate in East London. Police have also arrested the truck driver on suspicion of murder. Interior Minister Priti Patel has expressed shock over the tragic incident. Police said the truck was believed to have come from Bulgaria and entered Britain through Holyhead, Wales, 3 days back. They said the process of identifying the bodies is currently underway. He said the arrested truck driver belonged to Northern Ireland. Turkey says there is no need for a new operation in northeastern Syria at this stage. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said it will continue to monitor the situation with its border with Syria. The statement came after the U.S. confirmed the withdrawal of Kurdish forces from Ankara's proposed safe zone in Syria. In a phone call, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu that the border area has been cleared. President Donald Trump also said good news seems to be coming with respect to Turkey, Syria, and the Middle East. Earlier, Turkey and Russia reached a deal on a safe zone in Syria. Now, Russia has accused the U.S. of betraying Kurdish forces and leaving them at the mercy of Turkey in northeastern Syria. In a statement, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told Kurdish troops to cede or be battered by Ankara's forces. Peskov criticized the Pentagon for allying with the Kurdish forces and then abandoning them when most needed. He said the U.S. pursued the Kurds to camp closer to the Syrian border to fight the Turkish army. The statement followed a deal agreed upon between Russia and Turkey calling for a complete retreat of all Kurdish forces from border towns. Under the pact, Russian military police and Syrian border guards would start removing Kurdish forces. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper has arrived in Baghdad for talks with his Iraqi counterpart, Najah al-Shammari, on troops' stay in Iraq. Earlier, U.S. troops withdrawing from northeast Syria crossed into Iraq. Esper will also meet the Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi to discuss the U.S. troop drawdown from Syria. Speaking to media, Esper said troops withdrawing from Syria will go to western Iraq to fight ISIS. Responding, Iraq's military contradicted Esper's announcement. The Iraqi military said that U.S. forces do not have permission to stay in the country and can only be there in transit. Currently, the U.S. has 5,200 troops in Iraq as part of an international coalition against ISIS. Now, the U.S. top diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, has endorsed Congress's impeachment accusation against President Donald Trump. In his testimony, Taylor said President Trump linked U.S. aid to Kiev to an investigation into former Vice President Joe Biden's son. In his 15-page opening statement, Taylor said Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky came under sustained pressure. The envoy said he discovered the Trump administration's irregular informal channel of U.S. policymaking in Kiev. Taylor said he sensed something odd, which threatened to undermine ties between both countries. The White House has said this testimony is part of a smear campaign from the far left of the Democratic Party. Earlier, President Trump branded the Democratic impeachment process a lynching, even before this new witness. Elsewhere, British lawmakers have rejected the government's proposed timetable for passing legislation to ratify the Brexit deal. The move leaves Prime Minister Boris Johnson's vow to leave the EU by the end of the month in doubt.
Order! Lawmakers voted by 322 to 308 against the program motion. Under this motion, the government proposed to pass the legislation quickly. Many lawmakers said it did not give them enough time to scrutinize such an important bill. Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the UK will leave the bloc with his deal one way or the other. Opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn said his party is ready to work with the government on a reasonable timetable. In an earlier vote, Johnson won approval for his Brexit legislation in a second reading. Lawmakers voted 329 versus 299 in favour of the Brexit legislation. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson will push for a general election if the EU proposes to delay Brexit until January 31st. The rejection has dealt a major blow to the UK Prime Minister's wish to deliver Brexit by the October deadline.
This House has just given its assent.
Well, Israeli forces have arrested 14 Palestinians from various parts of the West Bank. In a statement, the Palestine Prisoners Society said Israeli police rounded up 8 Palestinians from East Jerusalem. 4 others were detained during multiple military raids across the southern West Bank district of Bethlehem. Meanwhile, Israeli forces also conducted raids in Ramallah city. Nearly 6,000 Palestinians, including women and children, are currently languishing in Israeli jails. In news out of Lebanon, anti-government protesters have continued demonstrations on this sixth day of protests. Hundreds of thousands of people have flooded the streets, putting pressure on the government to enact long-promised economic reforms.
Protesters, furious at the political class for pushing the economy to the point of collapse, chant for revolution. The call for a strike has come despite the reforms by Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri and the resignation of government ministers. Banks are still closed amid uncertainty over how al-Hariri plans to ease an economic crisis and has ignited national protests.
He should be ashamed of himself and he should leave. It is embarrassing that until now we are still asking for electricity and water in schools and the least for our human rights.
Anti-government protests may have paralyzed the country, but one group of protesters took some time out to sing Baby Shark to soothe a toddler in a car. His mother said the toddler was surprised and starts laughing whenever he watches the video.
Hong Kong's legislature has officially withdrawn the extradition bill that sparked months of violent protests. Introduced in April, the bill sought to legalize the extradition of criminals to neighboring countries. Despite the move, though, protesters have refused to end their demonstrations. After weeks of protests, Chief Executive Carrie Lam had suspended the bill on June the 15th. Protesters demanded an independent commission of inquiry into police's handling of the unrest. Time now for a break. Don't go anywhere, though. I'll be back with plenty more news. Begin this segment in Iraq. Mosul was once considered one of the most prominent Middle Eastern manufacturing hubs. This all ended when the city was captured by ISIS in 2014. Now, 2 years after the Iraqi city was liberated from the terror outfit, the city is trying to recover its former glory.
Isolated and unproductive, the state of Mosul in Iraq today is a far cry of the city's industrial golden age. When ISIS overran the city, its factories were destroyed and their equipment was sold or repurposed into weapons. Business owners have slowly returned, but find a city with no reliable electricity and few distribution channels.
Before, everything was easy for us and nobody stopped anyone who was transporting goods in trucks, except for security procedures only. However, now it's different. You would need documents to enter. They wouldn't allow everyone to pass, and there are a lot of obstacles.
The city's old trade routes are now dotted with checkpoints collecting informal customs fees. This includes roads leading into Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region and to the country's capital, Baghdad.
Before 2014, we were exporting large quantities to the rest of the provinces, such as Baghdad, Basra, Najaf, and Amara. All the provinces were a unit, meaning we would trade by exchanging produced goods with material and vice versa.
Local businesses also have a hard time competing because the city is flooded with cheap imports. There's already fierce competition in Iraq over next year's budget, making it unclear if Mosul's ambitions for a commercial comeback will materialize.
Thousands of Syrian Kurds are trying to flee across the border into Iraq, but most are now stuck in a border town, struggling to find adequate support and resources. Find out more about them in this report.
According to the UN, thousands are affected by the offensive, but only around 176,000 Syrian Kurds have made it to Iraq. The figure also includes some 80,000 children, who now face their future in bleak makeshift settlements. The rest are still stuck mostly in Kurdish-run Syrian towns like Hasaka.
Our houses are still destroyed. People are still displaced. People don't have money, so many people left for other countries.
Some live in a packed classroom around 80 kilometers away from their hometown Ras Al Ain, stuck in another town in northeastern Syria. This town is run by Kurdish officials autonomously for years, scrambling to cope with an influx of displaced people. These refugees are skeptical about the future of northeastern region because of distrust with the leaders.
The ceasefire is a mere game. The scheme is more than this. It targets all Syria, especially the Kurdish province of Al Jazeera. We're not optimistic. The international powers have concealed things at the expense of people. And this is obvious to the Syrian people who will pay the price.
Turkey launched its Operation Peace Spring against Syrian Kurds after President Donald Trump announced withdrawal of troops from the region. However, a deal has now been struck between Turkey and Russia, which allows both countries to conduct joint patrols on the border.
Well, Greece has moved hundreds of asylum seekers to the mainland from an island on its coast. The decision was made to cope with the problem of crowded migrant camps. Officials say about 700 migrants and refugees arrived at Elefsina port near Athens from Samos Island. The Samos migrant camp was built for 650 people, but houses more than 5,700. These migrants will be settled in camps on the mainland. In Bosnia, a woman who lives in the village of Brez has spent over 40 years of her life wearing only red. The 67-year-old Zorica Rebernik has planned to live the rest of her life this way as well, even after she dies.
Obsessed with the red color, a Bosnian woman has been dressing in red from head to toe since her teens. The retired school teacher lives in a red house, which she has decorated with the same color furniture and houseware. She eats from red plates, drinks from red glasses, and sleeps in a red bed.
When I turned 18, I had a sudden strong urge to wear red. I don't know how to explain that, but I was only listening to my body. I had to have all things red and I could not calm down until I had everything in a red color.
Wearing shades like scarlet and vermilion gives her the feeling of strength and power. Her obsession with the color has made her a local celebrity in her hometown.
During 40 years as a school teacher, I also bought red garments and shoes for the kids in the school. They liked me and always looked at me, admiring my red clothes.
Bosnians' own Red Riding Hood goes to funerals dressed in red, eschewing traditional black. She even has a red tile grave built for herself and her husband in her garden.
Well, Julian's Auctions will hold its Icons and Idols Rock and Roll auction in New York on Friday and Saturday. Items belonging to legendary musicians Kurt Cobain, Michael Jackson, and Elvis Presley will hit the auction block.
A sweater worn by Kurt Cobain during Nirvana's appearance on MTV Unplugged in 1993 is expected to fetch up to $300,000. A leather glove of Michael Jackson wore during the Jackson's Triumph Tour in 1981 is expected to go for up to $200,000.
This auction, we have over 700 lots, and some of the top pieces are, we have Kurt Cobain's guitar that he played on the In Utero tour in 1993. We estimate it $300,000 to $500,000. What's great about the guitar is it comes with a letter from Courtney Love saying that it was Kurt's favorite guitar.
A mustard yellow velvet jacket worn by Elvis Presley in the film Go Happy will also be auctioned. Even 25 years after Cobain's death, his band Nirvana still has a strong following.
Even though Kurt Cobain died, 27 years old, over 25 years ago, I mean, there's still a fascination with him and his music, and he's constantly getting a new fan base. His Nirvana music, it's played all over the world, and there's become a surge in his collectability of his items.
The auction begins Friday morning at the Hard Rock Cafe in Manhattan. Bidders can also participate online.
European stock markets are trading mixed amid further uncertainty about Brexit. Nearly all Asian indices also closed down in the absence of positive developments. The CAC 40 index in Paris is leading losses, down about 0.5%. Frankfurt's DAX is flat, while London's FTSE 100 is nearly up 0.5%. Tracking overnight losses on Wall Street, most Asian stock markets have closed lower. Leading indices in Shanghai and Seoul lost nearly 0.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dropped 1%. Bucking the trend, though, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 Index gained 0.33%. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. That's the Bulletin here at Indus News. Thanks for watching.